Mexican Muralismos
by livstanger,
Christina Record,
and Nicholas Sisto. Mexican murals, or commonly called muralismos, have been around since the early 20th century in Mexico. They are often painted on walls of buildings or objects of a large scale. There are common characteristics that a majority of the Mexican muralismos share. The paintings are colorful a majority of the time. However, many murals have subdued colors so they look like they are supposed to be on the wall on which they are painted. Numerous murals have a combination of both sharp lines and soft lines. There are also murals that contain the blending of colors so that they don't seem as harsh as the painter may like.
The paint artists used are water-based. When murals were not as common, artists had to create their own paint by mixing pigments and minerals together, such as iron oxide, hematite, and carbon. They would have to grind their minerals and pigments on a concrete slab, otherwise they would not mix well. The artists paint on dry plaster. When a mural is painted on plaster, it is considered a fresco. When they are painting on a dry plaster wall, they must prep it so the color does not fade quickly. The muralists would have to wash the wall with water to remove all of the dirt so that the paint would stick to the wall to create a smooth image. Today, however, they are painted on large canvas panels and they are tailored to the space that they will soon occupy.
Paintings on walls have been around for thousands of years and date back to cave drawings. In the early 1920s, the Mexican Revolution had just ended. Slavery and poverty were prevalent, and Mexico was becoming vulnerable to foreign influence. Through this depression, a small but significant intellectual community emerged. This group was called Ateneum. Antonio Escudero, Alfonso Reyes, and Jose Valenzuelos established this community. They influenced an entire generation of painters and artists who changed the image of Mexican art. These artists turned to Mexican history and their own personal heritage to paint muralismos. These conveyed messages and told stories. The muralists refused to paint with an easel and canvas and wanted to express themselves on a larger medium. The artists wanted to express themselves through their art that people would see regularly. This movement was called Entrandismo. This idea united poets and artists to modernize Mexican culture by using icons and modern techniques. In the late 1920s, artists painted murals on the sides of government buildings during the time when the leaders of politics and culture desired to resolve the revolution. The government leaders wanted to educate the people. Many muralists' influence has surpassed the border of Mexico. In the early 1930s, artists painted large murals on canvas and exported them to the United States. Mexico did not approve of these actions, especially those of Diego Rivera. He premiered at the New Museum of Modern Art in the United States. When this occurred, the Mexican government wanted to bring the artist back to Mexico to create artwork for his homeland.
Diego Rivera is the most renowned muralist of Mexico, especially during the 1930s and 40s. He dropped out of school at an early age to pursue his passion for art. He painted what he saw in Mexico, and he was never proud of his artwork. Many people knew that Rivera had talent, but he only knew he loved to paint. Artists of Europe, particularly those in France and Spain, influenced him. His murals have easily recognizable themes that originated in Europe, such as painting hardworking people. He kept his murals folk-life, but at the same time, the details were elegant. Many muralists admired Rivera for his determination through the obstacles in the 1930s and 40s in Mexico.
Muralists of the 1930s encouraged to move past the revolution and think about the future. The government's beliefs and views on history were present in the Mexican mural movement. Many muralists insisted on building a new school in order to abolish the idea of limited creativity. They wanted to create true Mexican art without limitations on the Mexican identity. Then, the government employed artists to depict their views of Mexico's history on the walls in Mexico.
There are many influences on muralismos. Mexico's history and artistic heritage have had an impact on the themes of the murals. Pre-Columbian Mexican culture and indigenous people have influenced the muralists of the century to tell their stories through art. Murals have also depicted Mexican heroes and political fights. At the time, the revolution was over and the muralists were inspired to paint what had just occurred.
This picture is a political mural. The top of the mural depicts a Mexican citizen crying out in disgust. This was painted near the end of the Mexican mural movement, when the government was starting to become corrupt. There are colorful tears dripping from the saddened eyes of the citizen. The different colors represent the corruption through the years, extending from the Mexican Revolution to the end of the Mexican mural movement. The graffiti-looking lettering at the bottom translates to "Murals Saving Lives." The artist of the mural is unknown, but the translation at the bottom talks about the tears and the outcry for a new start for the government.
Religion is another influence that is commonly present in Mexican murals. In this mural, Our Lady of Guadalupe, or the Virgin Mary, is the focal point of the painting. She is enclosed in a ring of gold that symbolizes her purity and strength. Mexican symbols of religious holidays surround Mary. This depicts how integrated religion and celebration are in Mexican society. There are symbols of El Dia de los Muertos, or the Day of the Dead. There are also roses that surround Our Lady of Guadalupe and that represent the delicacy of the Virgin.
In the 1970s, muralists started to paint murals that show Mexican pride and unity. They started to reject the idea of painting militant and controversial paintings. They wanted to show Mexican patriotism at its finest. This eliminated racial mixing or collaboration. Before, many artists would work on one mural at a time. They would be from a variety of ethnic backgrounds and would bring different cultural aspects to the mural. When there would be numerous artists working on a mural, there would be disagreements between the artists.
Mexican murals have various purposes. Many murals that are painted tell a story. They communicate messages and educate the viewers. The muralists liked this idea of public art because it did not put a limitation on who could view the mural. The viewers can be of different social classes and races. Muralismos can be designed to inform the people of the area. A goal of murals is to give people a vision of seeing themselves as great and noble. They can be interpreted in many different ways. They can be seen as expressing the local culture and challenging racism as well as from a religious standpoint. These muralismos can help the viewers rediscover Mexico's past and culture. Diego Rivera's murals restored Mexico's history and explored different aspects that the nation as a whole respected. They reflected the exploitation of the native people of Mexico that the European supremacy caused. The muralists wanted their paintings to bring a positive light on the future of Mexico and to make others believe that it has changed.
Painting murals remains popular today in Mexico. Muralism has diffused throughout the world, but they are still most prevalent in Mexico. Artists continue to paint what occurs around them, and they continue to use techniques that have been around for decades. One could expect muralismos to be around as long as there are walls in Mexico.
Many people do not know how to view a mural correctly. There are usually many aspects to view, and sometimes it can be confusing to understand. This is a video of just one way to view a mural.
Now the eye is going to be directed to the areas of highest contrast, which means if you have a really dark color and a really light color, your eye is going to go there immediately. So when you first walk in, your eye will generally land about here. That's because in our society we do everything left to right, so the eye will naturally fall toward the left of the picture plane. Now the way I have the value scheme laid out, your eye is going to travel down across the hills to that corner. The dark corner, contrasted with the sunlight hitting the side of the pillar there, is going to direct your eye up, follow the curve of that arch around the top of the wall to that highlight where the sunlight is hitting the leaves at the top of the wisteria vine. From there, the eye will travel down the vine, back to where you started, across, and then maybe travel up that vine and get caught in this loop here with that arc. You want to try to keep the viewer's eye on the painting for as long as possible.
The history of muralismos has transformed into graffiti. In today's society, this is seen as another form of art, even though the idea has been around for decades. Here is a video of a modern artist performing his work on the streets.